What is up, everybody? Happy Thursday to you. Welcome back to the Locked Bulldogs podcast. Today we're talking Tennessee. We brought in a Tennessee expert talking about what the Vols are going to be like in the upcoming college football season, what to expect from them. Maybe Georgia's toughest opponent on the schedule, maybe the biggest chance for a loss, people say, for the University of Georgia. And so what's the Tennessee football team going to be like this year? All of that today on the Locked On Bulldogs podcast.
You are Locked On Bulldogs, your daily podcast on the Georgia Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Daniel here from the Locked On Bulldogs podcast, joined by Eric Kane today, host of Locked On Vols, Tennessee insider, expert, guru, and I assume diehard Tennessee fan. Eric, I assume that you're not just covering a team, but that you actually are a fan of the team that you're covering.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up, born and raised in East Tennessee, so it's kind of hard to escape.
Comes with the territory.
Yeah.
With the out in East Tennessee. I'm in Nashville right now, and so I'm surrounded and inundated with Tennessee fans, which sometimes is fun as a Georgia fan, sometimes less fun as a Georgia fan, depending on how it's going. But Eric, thanks for jumping on today. Excited to talk about the Vols.
Yeah, man, thanks so much for having me.
All right, well let's just jump in. From a Georgia fan's perspective, I think it's not a secret, mentioned in the open, that so late in the year, Week 11 matchup between Georgia and Tennessee in Knoxville is the toughest game, I think, without a doubt, on Georgia's schedule. It is the biggest opportunity, the most likely chance for a Georgia loss this season. I assume you don't have any dispute about that. And so from your perspective, obviously a lot of changes in Knoxville between last year's team and this year's team. There's a lot of turnover. When you have a successful teams, you lose a lot of players. Tennessee lost their share of players to the NFL draft. But continuity on the coaching staff, a little turnover on the roster. What are the general expectations coming out of Tennessee fans for this upcoming season?
Yeah, I think the general expectations are, go and do it again. You understand that you lose some playmakers. This is college athletics. There's turnovers all the time, and especially now in the era of the transfer portal, there's turnover for sure. But losing Hendon Hooker, that's big. Joe Milton is not Hendon Hooker. Joe Milton, I think can be good, but he'll be good in his own way. He's not going to be, in my opinion, I don't think he's going to be a finalist for the Heisman Trophy, but he can be good enough, and I think he can be certainly, capable enough to lead this team to, 9 or 10 wins. But I think the expectation is to get back to 10 wins for sure. And you got some good additions via the transfer portal. You mentioned that you have continuity on the coaching staff. You had your offensive coordinator leave, but you promote your longtime, quarterbacks coach, a guy that played for Josh Heupel at Oklahoma when he got his start. So expectation is to just keep on going, knowing that it's not going to be, it's easier said than done, but it's just continue on and try to roll through that SEC schedule and get back to double-digit wins.
Yeah, you mentioned the turnover at coordinator, and I knew that happened when I said continuity on the coaching staff, but to me, that's like Georgia losing Mel Tucker. Georgia, when Georgia has turnover at the defensive coordinator position, you don't blink, because you know that the defensive coordinator, while a valuable role at Georgia, you don't have to worry about that, because you have a head coach who is the best defensive mind in college football right now. At Tennessee, it's just the opposite. You have one of the brightest and most well thought of offensive minds in college football. And so you lose an offensive coordinator, yes, but did you lose your offensive coordinator? I would argue no, you didn't. He's still there on the sidelines, and he's still going to be, having a substantial influence over the play calling. So it's got to feel good as a Tennessee fan, right? Going in, knowing that Heupel system should be able to just repeat with new pieces, right?
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I mean, you had Alex Golish, who was a big part of game planning, and he called some plays, and I mean, he was good. Like, I'm not trying to discredit that whatsoever, and we'll see how he does in a head coaching opportunity. But yeah, this is Josh Heupel's offense. This is Josh Heupel's show. He doesn't trust many people. He trusted Alex Golish, and he trusts Glenn Ellerby, the offensive line coach, because they've coached together for years, and obviously Joey Halsley, who's now the offensive coordinator, because they've been together for 15 years. But this is Josh Heupel's deal. So you're exactly right. I mean, it's a loss, but in the grand scheme of things, the guy who's still making all the moves, calling the plays, and doing a bunch of the game planning is still on the sideline being your head coach. So we'll see. His first 2 seasons in Knoxville, Tennessee's had a receiver that's gone off. So I think it's a fair assumption that one of Tennessee's receivers is going to go for over 1,000 yards and get some praise. Could that be Brew McCoy? Could that be Dante Thornton, who's coming in from Oregon? We'll have to see. But I think Tennessee's got some weapons. You have a really deep running back room. There's not a star in that group, but there's a lot of experience in that group. And you got to replace some guys on the offensive line, which is going to be easier said than done. But you bring in some experience, like John Campbell from Miami, who's probably going to start at left tackle, and then everywhere else you just got to find a left guard. So again, if Joe Milton, who is experienced, this is now his 6th year in college. He's been a starter at 2 Power 5 programs. He's seen a whole lot of football, and it looked like he improved from year 1 to year 2 in the system. If he can take another step, I think there's no reason for Tennessee to not just plug and play with some different pieces, like you said.
Yeah, let's talk more about that. I want to ask you about Joe Milton. I want to ask you about what your opinion of which of those receivers might step up. We'll do all that right after this. FanDuel is the number 1 sportsbook partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. Locked On Bulldogs, Locked On Vols. It's the place to go to place all of your preseason wagers. Eric already mentioned potential Heisman odds. If you're a Tennessee fan listening to this podcast and you want to go place a bet on Joe Milton to be a Heisman finalist, those odds are up on FanDuel. You can get preseason win totals on FanDuel. You can bet on Major League Baseball, tennis, golf, whatever it is. FanDuel has got it. Right now, if you're a new user, Locked On has a promo code for you, FanDuel.com/Locked On. Up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't cash when you go to FanDuel.com/Locked On. Make every moment more with FanDuel. All right, Eric, let's jump in to the offensive side of the ball, and let's start, obviously, with Joe Milton. He's the big story. A lot of these, you look at these, it's off season, it's talking season, as Steve Spurrier famously called it back in the day. But you look at a lot of these lists, these top 5 quarterbacks in the SEC, these, best quarterbacks coming back, and Joe Milton finds his way near the top or at the top of some of these lists, ahead of guys like KJ Jefferson, who have been in the SEC and doing it for a number of years, ahead of guys like Jaden Daniels at LSU. Joe Milton as a newcomer, now I know he's not a true newcomer because he did play at the end of last year, played in the bowl game. What are the realistic expectations? Because you mentioned he is a drastically different quarterback than Hendon Hooker, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Joe, the talent has always been there, right? I mean, let's keep in mind, he's been a starting quarterback at Michigan and, suffered an injury there. And with COVID and how everything was so weird, he went ahead and left and came into Tennessee. And, Josh Heupel did 15 spring practices the spring of 2021 and said, I got to find a quarterback. And he went out and he got Joe Milton from Michigan, comes in and was pretty much, I don't want to say handed the job, but it's kind of what it was. He was given the green light, and he played 6 quarters, got hurt. Hendon Hooker goes in, and that's all she wrote. But
rest is history.
Yeah. I mean, he's got experience. He's seen a whole lot of football. He's obviously, from a physical standpoint, he's a freak, right? He's dropped 10 pounds to kind of help with his elusiveness a little bit, and I think that'll help him. But, for Joe Milton, what I'm intrigued about is can you do it week after week after week? So, you went in there. You started against Vanderbilt on the road, and as Vanderbilt, it's not a great opponent. Tennessee had a historic run game in a monsoon, and you didn't really have to do a whole lot, right? You won big, 56-0 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then you have a month to prepare for Clemson. And, Clemson, sure, there were some guys that didn't play in that game on both sides, but Clemson's a good ball club. And he played really well, threw 3 touchdowns, 260 yards passing, whatever the case was. But he had a month to prepare, and that's great to see. So my thing for Joe is I want to see what you can do from 1 week to the next week to the next week. And so, we'll see. All the tools are there. I think the sky's the limit for him. And again, there's already been so many comparisons to, Anthony Richardson and Will Levis last year, just from a physical makeup to where if he can just do something this year, he'll get a whole lot of draft buzz. But I think he's improved as a quarterback. I think he's a different guy now than when he got to Tennessee. So we'll see what it looks like this fall.
And listen, you can't overvalue experience as coming from a fan base that I know you are well aware loves the old quarterbacks, the old men playing quarterback. Hendon Hooker, Stetson Bennett, people don't realize the same age, but Stetson Bennett perceived to be about 10 to 20 years older than any quarterback who's ever played college football. But you got another one. I mean, Josh Heupel's got another one, and I think that will that experience translate into maturity? Not all age with age, you would hope comes maturity, decision making, the ability to read a defense, the ability to make the right choice. I think the big question for Joe, what Hendon Hooker was so good at, was just the system gets guys wide open. Jalen Hyatt's running wide open down the field so often last year, and Hendon Hooker's was elite at recognizing that and getting the ball out. Can Joe Milton add that aspect to the big arm and to the elite, athleticism that he already possesses? I think so goes him, so goes the Tennessee football team. You mentioned the receivers and the running game. Apart from the quarterback, give me an offensive skill position that excites you the most on Tennessee's upcoming team this year.
Yeah, it's going to be wide receiver for me. Tennessee plays 3 wide receivers, and they can get up there in fall camp like they had the last 2 years and say, hey, we got 6 or 7 guys we want to rotate in there. We want this rotation to be big. They can say all they want. Because of the tempo, Tennessee plays 3 wide receivers. That's just what it is. Right now, Tennessee has 4 wide receivers that can play and have played. And so, football has a way of evening itself out. Somebody will get hurt, yada, yada,
Yeah.
It is what it is. But I'm intrigued to see how that shakes out. You got Brew McCoy, who's going to play, who I think is going to be Tennessee's go-to guy, the number 1 target. On the other side, you got Ramel Keaton, who, was a man that was forgotten. He's been here for 4 years. He's using his COVID year now. And when Cedric Tillman was hurt last year, man, he came out of nowhere and stepped up and was huge for Tennessee. Then you got Squirrel White, who he was a true freshman last year. He's about $160, playing in the slot, but for some reason he's tough enough to play in the slot, and he's getting around defenders. Then you bring in Dante Thornton. So, and though he wasn't super productive at Oregon, I think this offense will bring it out of him. He's 6'4", he's 205 pounds. He's long, he's explosive. He can play inside, he can play outside. So I'm really intrigued to see kind of what this wide receiver group kind of looks like, midway through the season. So we'll see. Obviously, as you said, as Joe goes, Tennessee's offense will go 100%. That's exactly right. But I think this receiving room could add a whole lot of explosive plays for this offense here this fall.
All right, let's jump over to the defensive side of the ball. Let's talk about what Tennessee brings back there, what the expectations are on that side right after this. All right, Eric. I hate to do it, but I guess we have to talk about defense. As much fun as it is to talk about Tennessee's offense, let's talk about Tennessee's defense. They were not. It's not like they were terrible last year. It's not like Tennessee had a really bad defense. They were, I would say, miles behind the Tennessee offense because the Tennessee offense was very good.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say Tennessee really struggled on defense. They obviously gave up a lot of points in some games that mattered, but the offense, kind of was there to bail them out on many occasions. Is the expectation that 2024, this 2023-24 season, the defense is going to see some improvement or some regression, or where are we at on the Vols defense?
Yeah, it's a good question. And, Tennessee's defense, as you pointed out, everybody remembers the South Carolina game. That was horrible. I mean, you can't erase it, right? Giving up 64 points or whatever it was, and gave up a lot of points to Alabama, but who doesn't? And 38 points to Florida, but you won those games. But anyway, Tennessee's defense, where it mattered last year, third downs, fourth downs, red zone scoring, turnovers, sacks. Tennessee got better. Tennessee was a better defense last year by pretty considerable margin than it was in 2021. So we'll see if Tennessee can take a step again this year. You're bringing back a whole lot of returners, and with this defense, you got to throw the yards per game out the window because they're on the field for 100 plays.
Possessions, it's a high possession game. Yeah, for sure.
So you got to throw the yards per game out the window there. But I do think Tennessee's poised to take a step defensively because they are deeper in the front seven more so now than they've ever been. Tennessee played I kid you not. Tennessee played 3 linebackers in 2021.
The whole year.
Yeah, the whole year. Tennessee, I take that back. They played 4 linebackers, but one of those guys got hurt in game 3. So they had a 3-man rotation the whole year. It wasn't much deeper last year, but it was a little bit deeper. Now you're going to play 6 linebackers this year probably that you feel good about. A lot of options on front 7 with Rodney Garner. And then the secondary, which everybody would say is the weakest point, deservingly so, they bring back everybody but one starter from last year. They bring back a whole lot of depth. And then you go get Gabe Judy-Lally, who has SEC experience, who was really, really good at BYU last year to play one of the corners. So we'll see if Tennessee's defense can take a step up. I think it will. I think it'll continue to progress. But again, in this defense, you just need to complement that offense. Make some red zone stops, third down stops, get the football back to your offense, and go roll.
Yeah, I agree with you. Traditional stats don't really do teams like Tennessee very much justice. You got to look at, defensive yards per play and more aggregated statistics like that. And creating negative yardage plays, those are huge for any defense, but particularly a defense like Tennessee's. All right, Eric, I'm gonna let you get out of here. Before I do, hit me with the biggest question mark. If Tennessee's gonna regress, if Tennessee's gonna go 8-4 this year, which it's a tough schedule, it's not like they could go 8-4 and not be really bad. It's a tough schedule, obviously. But if Tennessee's gonna go 8-4 this year, what are the biggest question marks in your mind? What's the biggest reason why?
Yeah, offensive line's big. You're replacing a guy who just went number 10 overall in the NFL draft. You're replacing another guy that is with the Kansas City Chiefs right now who's been a 3-4 year starter. So, it's not like you can just plug and play and it's going to be seamless. Now, you can plug and play. It might take a little while, but it's not going to be seamless. So, the offensive line, and again, it's just all connected, right? And I hate to just sound so elementary saying this, but it's quarterback play. It's so, as it's so important to everything that you do offensively. And Joe Milton, again, has got all the potential in the world. He's got the experience. He's been around. I think he really benefited. You talked about maturity earlier in the show. I think he really benefited from sitting back and watching Hendon Hooker, off the field, on the field. They were roommates. They did everything together. And I think that helped Joe grow. We'll see how much. But everything you do offensively, and really in any offense, especially in Josh Heupel's offense, it stems from the quarterback. So the difference in 10-2, 8-4. It's are you a good or a great quarterback? We'll find out. And I'm excited to see Joe Milton try to do that. But it should be interesting regardless. I feel like obviously I'm biased here, but I feel like football's so much better. The SEC's better. When Tennessee's winning, and Tennessee was winning last year, and it was a heck of a ride.
Well, listen, we can both agree that Florida sucks, and Georgia needs a rival in the SEC East, and so I agree with you. I want Tennessee football to be that rival. Florida is clearly not until they get things figured out, and so excited about the upcoming season. Excited about the matchup in Knoxville. If you're a Georgia fan, it's fun to keep up with other teams. Go subscribe to the Locked On Vols podcast. Eric does a great job, and he breaks down his own team and gives you information about rivals that you can enjoy. So if you're a Georgia fan, give Eric a follow on Twitter and go subscribe to his show. And Eric, Can't wait till this season. We'll have you back on as the season gets closer and talk more football.
Sounds great, man. Can't wait.
All right, see ya.